Hello everyone, this is Poohead189, and today we're going to be talking about Saiyan power levels, and what might be the proper, normal Saiyan strength. Now if you've followed my channel for some time, you know I've kind of already covered this in my big Saiyan video. In fact, when I mentioned I was making this video to my friends, Clearin was like, "Didn't you already talk about this?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I'm going to do a slightly deeper dive in it." However, before we get started, I do want to reiterate, I have a lot of videos, and if you have questions about Dragon Ball, please check out my back catalog. 9 times out of 10, I've already talked about it, and one of my favorite things is seeing new comments on old videos. That being said, let's dive in. Now, the best source of information we have on Saiyans and their battle strengths are, you guessed it, the 3 Saiyans we see arriving on Earth during the Saiyan saga. We have Raditz, a lower class Saiyan, at around 1200 in strength. Now already we might have some contention there, because in the Daizenshuu 7, it notes that Raditz's power level is 1500. However, if we open up our handy-dandy notebooks and we look back at my Judging Canon video, in it, I have a tier list on canonicity and what overrides what. Of course, if you have a problem with my tier list, that's okay, but I will still show my findings and my logic in this video because, of course, I'm going to follow my tier list. The most canon source of information we have is the manga itself, as that is our primary source. Maybe it's because my academic studies are from history. Primary sources are likely the best source of information we can get from or for anything, and I'm using the same logic in Dragon Ball. After that, one step below is Akira Toriyama and his statements and interviews, since he is the author with immense sway. And then on the third tier of canonicity, we have the Daizenshuu, specifically the Daizenshuu 7, because it is specifically the guide for the manga, which, while not written by Toriyama, has his blessing, and he himself stated he would have used it during the creation of the manga if he could. So, in my eyes, and in the eyes of a lot of big debaters in my experience, the Daizenshuu 7 is typically canon unless directly contradicted by either the manga or Akira Toriyama. And in this instance, it is contradicted. While the Daizenshuu 7 states Raditz's power is 1500, Nappa and Vegeta say his power rivals the Cybermen at 1200. And Raditz is also deathly afraid of Piccolo's special beam cannon power being at 1330. Now, Toriyama does state that Raditz is slightly above a Cyberman, but it's still around 1200, maybe 1250, but certainly not above 1330. Or I should say, certainly below that. So we have Raditz's power between 1200 and 1300, right? Okay. So next is Nappa's power. Again, while I think the Daizenshuu 7 is good for giving us powers that aren't contradicted, like Tien and Krillin and Yamcha in the Saiyan saga, there is a problem with Nappa's, at least in my opinion. It is stated Nappa's power level is 4000. Now, we have 2 instances of Nappa fighting. The first is Nappa fighting multiple opponents that are weaker than him, and the next is fighting an opponent who is a little bit stronger than him. His opponent's battle strengths are Piccolo at 3500, Tien at 1830, Krillin at 1770, and Chaozu at 610, and Gohan, whose power is around 1000, but that shoots up to 2800 with his Rage Boost Masenko. Nappa does have a bit of trouble sometimes, however, overall he hardly gets hurt. Krillin dodges an attack or two, but other than the Destructo Disc scare, one shot from Nappa, and this is a shot that even misses Krillin, and it takes Krillin out. Piccolo is taken out for a few panels with one hit, but manages to get back up and hit Nappa from behind, being the only real damage Nappa gets in the fight, other than a few scrapes and bruises from Tien's Tri-Beam or Kikoho, and a little bit of a scuff from Chaozu's sacrificial attack, and the cut on his cheek from the Destructo Disc, of course. Meanwhile, when Goku shows up, Goku's power level, when fully powered up, is over 8,000. He dominates Nappa in the fight until Nappa calms down and can use his full power, and while Goku still has the advantage, it's far closer than earlier, Goku even admitting it would take him forever to beat Nappa without the Kaioken. However, because Nappa's fight with the other Z fighters is a bit drawn out, that has caused some people to think that maybe the 4000 power level is not inaccurate. However, due to the reasons listed above, as well as the Z fighters being able to double or triple their strength with attacks like with Piccolo and Goku against Raditz, 4000 cannot be correct in my estimation. Plus, I tend to use this very simple logic. If I can lift 250 pounds, what is harder, lifting 50 pounds or 350? Well, obviously lifting 350 is harder. In fact, it would be impossible if my limit is 250, which is a simple way of saying that it's far more unbelievable that a 4000 power level could fight one that is over 8000 for what would be an extremely long period of time than Nappa with a 7000 power level fighting multiple smaller ones. It's much more believable if Nappa is toying with them or holding back than Nappa being able to go above and beyond what is rational and logical to be able to hold Goku off. And so it is in my contention that Nappa is about 7,000 or maybe even slightly higher when he is in tune with his emotions. And I don't mean after he's seen a therapist, I mean when he calms down. However, when angry or when he is toying with people, he seems to be closer to what the Daizenshuu states. Of course, the Saiyans also do not know about power levels growing, but he probably fights with the skill and speed of someone slightly lower, yet it might not read that he is lower in a scouter. Then, of course, both in the Daizenshuu 7 and the manga, we have Vegeta at 18,000. Nappa's power at 7,000 plus would be rare, but Vegeta's would be a huge outlier. Unless we count someone like Broly, or potentially Vegeta's father, Vegeta's power was probably the greatest in generations, so we won't even use that in our calculations. Now, there is some confusion amongst the fandom on Toriyama's statements on Raditz. Raditz is from a low-class family, and we do know that families are a big part of power levels, as Nappa says Goku being stronger than him is an affront to the Saiyan hierarchy because he comes from a prestigious family. And Vegeta is obviously of the royal line, and he is even stronger. Toriyama also states there's low-class warriors, middle-class warriors that likely make up nobility, and then upper-class warriors like Vegeta and his father. Now, Nappa implies he is a prized fighter even for his prestigious family. So if we go by my estimation that he is a bit over 7,000 when he really shows his full strength, and Raditz is a low class at slightly over 1,200, that gives us a ballpark of what your average Saiyan might be. However, there is something that people always misinterpret about Raditz, and that is this Akira Toriyama quote from Sakyo Jump at the beginning of 2018 in January, and Toriyama says Raditz is an upper-level fighter. Well, just like countless other things in the fandom, no one ever bothers to read the full quote. I'll read all of it so you get the full picture. The interviewer asks, "Do all Saiyans become combatants?" And then Toriyama says, "A baby's battle power is measured as soon as they are born. If their numbers pass a certain standard, then they are considered upper-level warriors and immediately raised as combatant candidates. On the other hand, those whose numbers remain low even after a certain amount of time has passed are regarded as low-level warriors and become either engineers or are sent off to a planet somewhere as infiltration babies. If they grow strong enough to conquer that planet, then they can return to their homeworld as a combatant. However, infiltration babies do not have a high survival rate. Raditz was an upper-level warrior and assigned to the same group as Nappa as a proper combatant. Before long, Vegeta was added to that group too." Okay, now this seems like a very straightforward explanation, but the problem is people confuse level with class. Raditz was born with a power level that allowed him to stay on planet Vegeta and fight with a battle group at a young age. Nappa is as well, and then of course Vegeta. This cordons them off as upper level, but that does not mean that their standing in Saiyan society has changed. It is just something that differentiates between them and infiltration babies, and also the engineers, of course. Raditz was not born with a low battle power, but that does not mean that he has a high battle power as an adult, nor does that mean that he isn't low class. In fact, he has to be, since Toriyama said that there were only 10 middle-class Saiyans, and the royal family in the upper class, and then the entirety of the Saiyan race otherwise were all lower class. If families produce high power level warriors, like what Nappa seems to imply, then the likelihood of Raditz being one of the middle class when we already have Nappa and his family, and likely other families, it would be weird if Nappa's was the only one, the likelihood of Raditz being there would be astronomically low. Again, Toriyama's statement that I read was merely differentiating between Saiyans allowed to fight in battle groups from an early age based on their childhood powers, and Saiyans sent off or made to be engineers. Now, when Goku arrives and his power reads 5,000 at a resting state, Nappa and Vegeta are bewildered he could gain so much power in so short a time. However, they don't seem like they are insulted about Goku's power being around 5,000, as if that's strange for a normal Saiyan. It's only when his power is over 8,000 and Nappa is losing that Nappa starts talking about lower class Saiyans. This makes me think that if Raditz as an adult is considered a weakling, and Goku can be 5,000 without them talking about it being impossible for him to be low class, it is my contention that the average low class Saiyan was between Raditz's strength at around 1,200 all the way up to Goku being around 5,000. Then the power begins to rise into the middle class and the noble clans, so this means that Saiyans likely weren't very dissimilar in strength to the average Dragon Clan Namekian fighter, which seems to be around 3,000 from what we see in the early Namek saga. Of course, this does have some speculation on my part, and I understand if you think differently, however, that is my best guess. I will say as a side note that in the Bardock movie, Bardock's power level was around 10,000, which is very close to King Vegeta, and his squad were likely not far behind him. I actually kind of prefer Saiyans having powers between 5,000 to 10,000 because it gives a really cool scenario on societal upheaval. It would make it so Frieza's technology and guidance would allow Saiyans to grow exponentially in strength, not only to make him think they could one day pose a threat to him, but also that the royal family, who doesn't go out on many missions, is very close to being overwhelmed themselves, and they don't even realize it yet. Literally a societal revolution that would have occurred very shortly if Frieza hadn't killed them all. Of course, this is non-canon, and I don't think those power levels are indicative of Saiyans in the manga. Like I said earlier, it's probably between 1,200 to 5,000, but it's a neat idea you get from the Bardock movie. Either way, thanks so much for everyone watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, please like and comment. Subscribe or join the Patreon if you think I deserve it. And I always love it when you share the video or talk about my stuff on social media or Reddit or whatever. In fact, for my last joke video, when I got that image of the other Dragon Ball tubers, it actually came from a Reddit thread that I didn't expect to stumble upon, but in it, 3 people mentioned my channel as one of the best Dragon Ball channels, which was really cool. I love that. So I appreciate those to those people. Also, please remember to check my back catalog if you're curious on anything, and I want to give a shout out to my patrons. Recently, 2 patrons have sent in $30 or more per month, being Autumn and Reb, which has almost doubled the amount I get monthly, because I got 99 bucks before them, and now I get like 152, which is crazy. And now, yes, Patreon shaves a bit off the top because that's how Patreon makes its money. But the majority of that is going to me, and I so appreciate that. So I want to thank those 2, and I also want to thank everyone else who thinks this channel is worth their hard-earned cash, because some of y'all have been my patrons for like over a year now, and that's crazy. So thank you so much. I appreciate all of you and all of those who like and comment and share and talk about it and everything. So just know I appreciate y'all. Okay, guys, have a great one. See ya.